In 3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. It is that time again, ladies and gentlemen, as we get and step back into Dane's ring one last time. Why don't you tell us exactly which film you had us watch this time around?
All right. Well, these last couple weeks we have been exploring the Rocky series. We have seen extraordinary highs for the character and extraordinary lows, and we have seen seemingly all that there was to see. But in 2006, Stallone revisited the franchise that seemed to have been laid to rest for 16 years, but no, here we are. We got Rocky Balboa, and we're going to be exploring that. And we might touch on a little bit of the Creed movies, but I specifically kind of wanted to end it here because the Creed movies, as good as they are about Adonis Creed as a character. Rocky is in them as a supporting character, and we don't really find out a whole lot new about him or his journey outside of just a few little tidbits. The bulk of his character completes it. His character basically completes his arc in this film, and this is the last film in which he is the protagonist. So it seems like a worthy ending point. And this film came about because Stallone was very unhappy with how Rocky 5 turned out. Rocky 5 was a critical disappointment. It was a box office disappointment, and seemingly there wasn't really anywhere else for Rocky to go. And so it felt like a logical place to end it at the time, but it also left a lot of people unsatisfied, myself included. And then lo and behold, here comes this movie called Rocky Balboa, and some people were like, "Why can't it be Rocky 6?" And yeah, that probably would have been more consistent, but here comes this movie, and I remember that I had heard rumors about it, uh, when I was younger, and I didn't really know if it would actually happen. But then, lo and behold, I saw the poster for it, heard some initial buzz for it, saw trailers, and the reputation was, oh, this is actually supposed to be kind of good, and so I saw it in the theater, and lo and behold, it was a Rocky movie that we never thought we'd see. So, that's a very brief summary of it. But
The Rocky movie we never needed or wanted.
well, on that level, we can get into first impressions now. Kroll, I know you had not seen this film. You had only seen 1 through 5. You saw this movie for this show, and you did not care for it.
No, I did not. I feel like I said, I liked 5, and I feel like 5 ended the series well. It ended the series with everyone alive. I really like Adrian's character. The fact they killed her off, they don't even say why she died. It's statistically proven fact that 9 times out of 10, the guy will die.
They do say why she died.
Yeah, they do.
The guy will die. Oh, well, I fucking missed it.
Woman cancer.
Yeah, okay. It was, yeah.
Well, 9 times out of 10, the guy will die before the lady, and the fact that everything that Rocky went through, he'd expect him to go way before her. But I did not hear that, and I don't know. And also, the other issue is, 5 years after the events of Rocky 5, he opens a restaurant in her name, which is cool. But where the hell did he get the money from? Because, like we said, he didn't make any money in Rocky 5. He was still broke. So all of a sudden, there's this restaurant that he has.
Well, he probably got a small business loan.
Yeah. Well, who knows?
I have a feeling if anyone could get a loan in the city of Philadelphia, it probably would have been Rocky.
I was gonna say, like, he could have had a George Bailey situation where people come in with their laundry baskets full of money to help him get started. He has that kind of appeal in his hometown. That's for sure.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I just
the point is he's still living modest means, but he's not like absolutely destitute anymore. And people can bounce back, especially if it seems like the restaurant does well. So
Yeah,
you know, I don't.
I know. I just they don't really go into the restaurant much at all.
Well, do they need to? I mean, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but you know,
I
well,
think they would.
keep going with impressions. We'll get
I think they
into
would,
some
and
of
I
that.
also think that they should have. I don't know, maybe more obvious vote. I don't know how. I watched the freaking movie right here, and I don't know how I missed it, but I didn't see how she died, and it was just like they kept Polly alive and not her, and it's just like, I mean, I liked Polly all right, but you know, she was his heart
Well,
and
that's kind of the
soul,
point of that's
and
kind of the point of the movie, I'm afraid to say, but
well, I think it was not needed, and the point is stupid, and they should have had her in it. It would have been a hell of a lot better movie, and yeah, I definitely did not like that at all.
well, we'll dive into that some more, but because to me that kind of is the movie. That's kind of the point of the
I mean,
movie. But,
it probably is the point of the movie, but I say, why have that point? Because there's no reason for that point.
oh
You know?
well, we'll explore exactly
As
why.
much as he said he hates 5, I hate this one. Like,
Well, we'll get into that more as we go, because I would take the opposite approach, but we'll go into it. Tammy, had you seen this before? I'm guessing no.
No, I hadn't seen it
What
before.
did you think?
Well, I actually did like this one better than 5.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that this one actually went with the franchise a lot better. I like the storyline better. So,
Well, this one's got more of a sense of the tone of like the first two, and more. I think this one kind of does justice to the character of Rocky Balboa a little bit better, but
I
you know,
think so too. I think that's why they didn't name it Rocky 6. That they named it Rocky Balboa, because you were. This was to bring out his character more.
yeah. Well, and
Thank you.
also, generally, I mean, people were making fun of Rocky 5, like, as a title, because they were like, "Wow, they really made it to 5." So they usually, when the one exception is actually Friday the 13th, which that series was never held in high esteem anyway, but, like, they made it all the way to 8 with that being, the number being in the title, but, you know, that was kinda widely ridiculed as well, and even they stopped doing that, after a while, but, like, very few franchises will actually get past, like, 5 or 6 in their titling, if that, you know, so that's part of why, but I do think you're right that they do bring character kind of front and center in this one
Star Wars
again.
got to 9. Of course, 8 sucked, but that's not the point.
Well, they didn't actually put it in the promo titles there, they just called them The Force Awakens, Last Jedi,
They're in
Rise
the
of Skywalker.
they're in the title.
Yeah, well, they're in the
Okay.
main title crawl, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, every poster, they didn't even draw attention to the numbering. That's part of my point, is in how things are marketed, but,
Well, the numbering's always been confusing to people.
of course, but
Who
and they were trying to
are
onboard.
huge fans of Star Wars.
Well, and
Especially because it was retroactive in the first place.
Well, they were trying to onboard new fans too, which, and you can argue that they possibly were trying to onboard some people with this one, and also just tie it into the first movie a little bit more directly. But
They were trying to make fans run away.
Tammy, keep going with your impressions.
That's it for now.
Okay, Dave, first impressions of this film.
This was my first time watching it.
Wow, a lot of first timers with this one.
I definitely liked the feel of this one better than I did 5. And I think this film was definitely needed to save the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, you've got Sylvester Stallone, like, directing the film number 1. I'm not sure if he directed. Did he direct number 5?
No, that was John D. Avildsen.
No, the guy in
And
the
that's
first one.
exactly why. That's exactly why, because this has always been Stallone's baby.
Yeah. Well, he didn't direct the first one, but he also wasn't quite ready yet. But I mean, he had a lot of input with one, even though he didn't formally direct it. Like he was still very much
think we can
involved.
fairly say that since then, this has pretty much been his story.
Oh, without a doubt, this is unquestionably his character, his franchise, and he, like he says, like the character says, I got to go out the way I got to go out, and so that's what he was doing here. So. Who better to do it than the guy who created the character? But you like the movie overall.
And a lot of people don't think that he has it in him to do anything because they think he's definitely older. He doesn't seem to have a whole lot in him, and it does have some really sad moments in here.
Oh yeah, this one
especially
definitely has
since
some harsh
Adrian has a gravestone.
Yes, she does.
And Paulie, he's like 1 foot in the grave almost.
Yeah, which, and again, ironically enough, Burt Young is still alive, as is Talia Shire. But just kind of funny. But we'll get into Paulie's character in this one because I think he's got some interesting counterpoints to Rocky as far as like where do we go from here. But again, we'll get there when we get there.
I do think it is unique that they use a character from the first film as a romantic interest, sort of.
I would say
it wasn't a romantic interest.
I would say it's a platonic friendship.
Yeah. They even said in the movie that he said
I think they kind of acknowledged that it could go either way, but that's not really. Yeah. It's
well,
more of a friendship.
I'm so glad it doesn't, though, because that would have pissed me off if they had gone that route, and thank God they didn't. But you like the movie overall, Dave?
There was only one woman.
Yeah, I liked the movie overall, and I think it's a nice installment to the franchise.
All right, Jake, had you seen this one before? I can't remember.
No, Dane, you're surrounded by virgins tonight.
Holy crap! I'm so pleased to have popped all your cherries.
Well,
I feel like a real Rocky stud muffin.
I will admit, when this came out, it was probably not long after I had seen Rocky for the first time. Mm-hmm. And it did get a lot of critical praise. And I was kind of amazed. I was like, wait a minute. Isn't this a franchise that was known for going really far downhill? Uh-huh. And isn't this character over the hill? Like, what could they possibly do with this now? I think I was one of a lot of people that were probably like, why? Do we need this sequel? I kind of had the same reaction when I heard about Creed. But both times there was all that buzz, all that praise. And I just, you have the best of intentions. I intended to check this out years ago, and I just never got to it. Creed, I pulled the trigger much sooner. I don't know why. It just happened that way. I guess maybe because I don't think this one actually got any Oscar nods.
No.
And the other one did, and that might have been why the difference in my prioritization there.
I think Creed got nominated for score, at least, if I recall. And
Creed got nominated for supporting actor for Stallone,
which was a big deal.
It was a big deal, and I was the only one that everyone's like, Stallone's going to win. It's his year. He's the Cinderella comeback kid. And I'm like, no, Mark Rylance nailed it in Bridge of Spies. And so he
was
won
good
it.
in that.
He nailed that. But I liked Stallone a lot. I liked him in
Yeah.
Creed, and that was one of the reasons I was willing to give the franchise another go. Again, I just didn't get around to it, but now I did, and I finally, I'm now caught up. I've seen everything up to Creed 2, so I've seen the whole franchise, both the Rocky-centric parts and the other. And I will be seeing Creed 3, maybe not in theaters. Well, I don't know. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see Michael B. Jordan step into the director's chair. That could be pretty cool.
Oh, he's directing this one?
Yeah, he'll be directing the next one. But I think Ryan Coogler did the first two.
No, he did the first one, and then I can't remember who did the second one.
Oh, okay. I'd have to check on that.
Good
but
thing
anyway,
they fired the one that did the first one.
No, Coogler did a great job. I'm going to disagree with everyone. I liked Creed.
I love
so bad.
I love both the Creed movies.
But Kroll, you'll get your chance. But I'm going to strongly disagree with you on this one. I really liked Rocky Balboa.
Yeah,
I really did. It's not a perfect movie.
Sounds like everybody disagrees with me.
There were some things. It bugged me that Adrian. I knew Adrian dropped out of the series at some point. I didn't know when, and I didn't know how it came about. And from what I read, apparently early drafts had her in the film, and Stallone just did not think the movie was coming together. And supposedly he talked to her, and they agreed to write Adrian out of the film. At least that's the story they went with. But I do think it adds a little bit of an emotional punch, because basically before, she was the anchor that he was able to grab onto whenever he started drifting too far into the ring. But with her gone, what does he have left but the ring? It's like, and so it's kind of I think narratively it worked beautifully. It is kind of a shame, especially as we said in the last discussion, that Talia Shire ended her involvement with the fifth movie. That's kind of unfortunate. And I do believe, for everything you've been saying, Dane, about how you didn't think Creed really added anything to Rocky as a character, I would debate that. I don't know that this one added anything for Paulie. Paulie, he got a couple good moments, but mostly he was a wasted character in this film, I thought.
I mean, but I think there were a few moments where he kind of counterpoints him, but I mean, it's not his movie either. I mean, none of these have been his movie per se, but like
some of them he had more to do. And
we'll get there when we get there. But there are some moments where he counterpoints Rocky in a way that makes sense relative to the way his character was set up. But there's not a whole lot new to discover with him, and there never really has been.
As far as bringing back Maria as a platonic interest, I thought that was pretty fun. Maria,
I agree with that.
And I also liked that they brought back Spider, like the first guy that Rocky beat in the franchise.
Yeah,
he comes back as this like born again Christian or whatever.
Spider Rico.
I knew they said they fought, but I didn't know who the hell he was.
You gotta pay attention there, Carl. You find all these amazing things about the movie.
Yeah, and as far as the thing of him owning a restaurant,
it's been like weeks since I saw Rocky 1.
And Carl, you said you're a boxing fan. I would think that.
No. I am not a boxing fan at all. I hate boxing.
I thought you said in the last one that you
I'm a wrestling fan.
Anyway, his owning a restaurant apparently was yet another nod. And in fact, he was apparently wearing a Jack Dempsey shirt at one point in the film. He keeps making these allusions to Jack Dempsey, which apparently Dempsey owned a restaurant after retiring. So I thought that was kind of a nice touch. What's that?
Who's that?
See, I know fuck all for boxing, and I know the name Jack Dempsey.
I didn't even know he was a boxer.
That's part of.
He was one of the.
I know Rocky Marciano. I know Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Granted, I know the name Jack Dempsey because there's a fish named after him. But anyway, that's that's a whole side thing. But anyway, overall, the movie does get it starts on such a downer. It really is a series of downbeats for much of the first half of the film, and there really are some parts that kind of strain credulity.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's a better made film than most of the ones that came before it. Probably since the first two, it's probably the best made Rocky film. And at the end, I thought it was probably. I'm not really sure my rankings of the different ones, but it's near the top.
Yeah,
So I
it's got the most
appreciated it.
realistic fight out of
Right.
all of them because they actually were fighting each other for real in that one.
Right.
Which
But
is
I mean,
pretty
the
cool.
setup for it was a little bit contrived. But
A bit.
even there, that had its foot in reality. It was largely inspired by the Foreman, what's his face
Was
fight.
that Ali the
Well, that one too,
yeah.
the simulated fight of Ali and Marciano.
Yep.
But there was, but the thing where George Foreman apparently became the oldest heavyweight champion by taking on someone much younger than he was, and
I remember that.
that was So that was kind of reference too. So yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I'm glad I finally got a chance to get around to that one.
Yeah, well, this one, I mentioned my history with 1 through 5, and hearing that, this one actually was really happening and was coming out, I couldn't believe it, and I had heard that it wasn't going to be impeded by 5, it was gonna continue, and, I'd heard what he said about, the doctor reappraisal of Rocky's injuries, how it wasn't as debilitating as it was, how those injuries would not have been as debilitating as his doctors would have made it seem, and that he could conceivably fight again, that sort of thing. So that kind of helped take the sting out of that. But then this was the only Rocky film, not counting the Creed movies, but of the Rocky series proper. This is the only one that I saw in the theater, and I was like 15, and I was pumped for it. I was like, what's this is supposed to be kind of good, and I picked up on like Spider Rico. I was like, oh my god, Spider Rico, and then little Marie growing up. Oh my god, I couldn't believe it. Like, and it was a walk down memory lane, but
I
like
remember Murray, so.
well, but it was a walk down memory lane, but it was a good one. Like, it was done very, very well, and I did like the fact that, again, unlike 5, I feel like this one really got the tone of Rocky down really well. I felt like the character got his dignity back despite being in not as great a circumstances as he once was, although better than he was in 5. I felt like Rocky acted like Rocky again. I felt like, the tone is probably the closest to one that any of the films in the series have been. And, like we mentioned, some parts of it do kind of strain credibility, although not entirely, because there have been precedents for it in the past, even not even the distant past, like a relatively recent past. And I feel like it did kind of help to put the series to rest on a better note than Rocky 5 did, and I think it helped the character to complete his arc. And again, what I love about the series and the character is all about defying the odds and proving people wrong. As far as, oh, he's 30, he'll never stand a chance against the champ. Oh, he'll never win, or it constantly defied the odds of how good a film could be, how good the sequels could be, how good a series could be, how good a years later sequel could be, and then of course with the Creed movies, how good spin-offs could be. And in keeping with the theme of just the underdog, of defying the odds, of defying expectations, I think that's really great. And again, not without its flaws, not without its things that you could be on board with or not, whatever. But
There's a few things I like about the movie.
yeah, well, it has its areas of things that I don't even love, but like for the relative to like again, this was a 16 years later sequel. This was something that had every reason to be horrible, and I think it succeeded far better.
All I got to say is Ghostbusters Afterlife. You want to see a sequel that waited a long time to come that was
Yeah.
fucking
That was a good one.
Or like I was thinking of like, you remember how like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull took forever, and
that was awesome too.
yeah,
Eh,
well, I think I liked it more when I saw it in the theater, but like upon reappraisal,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is definitely the weakest of the series.
it
But
doesn't hold up as well as at least 1 and 3.
yeah, well, this one, and I like Temple of Doom quite a lot, but
Choose the best.
yeah, it's point is back to this movie. I think this one definitely it perhaps relies on nostalgia a bit much. You could definitely argue that, but again, I think it executes it better than it could have. So in terms of the plot, basically, it sounds like the biggest point of contention possibly is also the linchpin of the movie, and this is where I'm gonna vehemently disagree with Kroll, which is that so we start off the movie and Adrian has died between movies and he's visiting her grave, and that is basically the glue that holds the movie together as far as his character is concerned. And I think, yeah, I would have liked to have seen Adrian have more of a formal send off, but at the same time, what it does for Rocky's character, I think, is really, really important because Adrian was his heart, his center, she was everything he was not. But also, she was his heart and soul basically, and you do get the sense that the best parts of him died with her. And so, but instead of like just turning into an asshole like he did in 5, um, you get the sense of like he's sort of like, why am I still alive? Why am I still here? I should be with her. And that happens a lot with the surviving spouse. And it's sad to see him in such a state, but at
Yeah,
the
I love
same
that
time,
line when he says to Maria when that he's like, I'm still, my wife died, but I'm still married. So
yeah,
it's like in
Right.
his mind, it doesn't matter that she's gone. She's the only one for him.
exactly. Well, and you actually, again, not to talk about Creed all that much, but like that was like one of the things that I felt was meaningful with his character there, but it gets set up in this movie, which is that he's ready to go, at any time, because again, with her having died, there is a part of him missing, and so that this movie really is, he describes it as the beast inside of him that needs to get out. And so that's basically his way of dealing with this loss, this hole that he feels in his heart. And you get the sense that that's a lot of that feeling in life that he has. That's where it's coming from, is this feeling like he's got this rage of all this loss and this just feeling incomplete. And so he wants to have control over some aspect of his life that he can control, which is to have one more really great fight, something to go out on and be proud of, in the same way that Stallone wants the character of Rocky to
Right.
get put to rest in a better way than 5 did. And I think that yeah, again, I would have liked to have seen Adrian have perhaps a more formal send off, but I feel like the fact that she's not here, it's like just knowing how much she meant to him. Like the first movie is a love story completely, and
Hmm.
it just hurts. Like we feel our, like, in a good way. I mean, we hurt along with Rocky when he is walking down memory lane, looking at where the skating rink was, looking at the ruined pet shop, looking at all these places that I never thought
Right.
I never thought we'd see those places again. So on the one hand, it's good to see him again. On the other hand, I like that it's not like Rocky 5 did that too, but it did it in a kind of a attempting to get back to the roots in a way that just felt kind of badly executed. But like here, we're seeing those things again, but it's through a much more melancholic lens. Like you
Right.
feel like things have been lost and things that cannot be gotten back.
Because
And
they have.
yeah, but that's true to life because like again, the skating rink was torn down and that happens all the time. And certain
Well,
businesses go out of business and that happens all the time. And
well, it's like they say, you can't go home again.
exactly.
And it's very true because things are always changing, always disappearing. Places that you used to really love, and it hurts especially hard for someone like Rocky, which he tells Polly a couple of times, I think.
Where
Like,
you live, you become.
if you live a place long enough, you become that place. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he kind of he feels like he in Philadelphia, like that's him, that's his place, that's him. They're intertwined. And so when he sees these places falling to ruin, then it kind of mirrors that feeling. And I also want to say, as far as Polly goes, I kind of was being dismissive, but part of the reason why is because he really, what little good was in him, a lot of that obviously went with
Adrian,
Adrian as well. And here he is just a shell of himself, and mostly it's the asshole part of himself that has soldiered on.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with it, was that he wasn't a great person to begin with, but like his way of dealing with things is usually to just not give them much thought to and drown them out in booze and everything, or in work or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, you could flip that on its head and say, well, he also knows how to move on perhaps a little bit better than Rocky does. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different because Adrian was Rocky's wife, so
Right.
you never really move on from that. But like, there's a flip side to Way as well. That
I wouldn't say that he really was an illustration of moving on. Like
I don't think so either. But like the point is, like he
actually
has
one of the more poignant parts in the film is when he finally gets canned after all these years from
I like that too.
Yeah.
From the Shamrock meat.
I don't need to
company,
watch.
Right.
I gotta watch.
Well, and
Right.
I did, I like that scene, but it was more just that he has the mentality of, because he never really cared about people all that much, he also isn't as liable to get broken up either. And so I feel like that was an important aspect of his being a foil to Rocky, because Rocky cannot move on and never really does. But how could he, relative to what she meant to him? So that's what I was meaning there, but obviously it's not his movie, it's Rocky's movie.
Right.
But but basically Rocky feels like, well, the city around him has changed quite a lot. The things that were there are not there anymore, and he's like,
Not even his statue.
now, his statue was taken down in storyline and also in real life. It was never like
Right.
gone forever, but like the statue has been moved quite a lot. It was on the steps, and then it was in an adjacent museum, and then it was at the base of the steps, which is where it is now, as I recall. But I like that detail quite a lot, and I like that it mirrors real life, because that did make me
Right.
sad as a kid, knowing that the statue wasn't there. And it is there now. It's just not in the exact same spot, but it's it's still there to be enjoyed. So that seems
Right.
fair. But it's but that did make me sad, hearing that our world has affected his, and this one seems to really understand that it's not in so much of a hyper reality as much as 4 would like us to believe that it was, but like this feels like it's in our world, or tries to be as much as possible. And you see
Right.
the city changing around him, and he's like, why am I still here? I'm this missing, I'm leftovers, my wife is no longer here, why am I still around? And So he's basically not sure of where he's going or what he's really doing anymore in the world. And meanwhile, his son Rocky Jr. is going by his birth name Robert, which one point that we didn't bring up about Rocky 5, because it was kind of a you blink and you miss it thing, and it factors in
Right.
the more, is that Rocky's birth name is Robert. And Rocky Jr. being a junior, his birth name is also Robert. So, and he's going by Robert because he wants to carve out more of an identity for himself, even though that's hard to do because he's the son of Rocky Balboa and he's
Mhm.
in the same city as Rocky Balboa.
And actually, and we touched on that briefly in the last discussion. Like I said, the fact that he's his name, literally the name follows him around everywhere, and he can't do anything about that,
Yeah.
other than maybe changing it or trying to move to the other side of the country or something. But the other thing, again, tying back to this, is the other part that it actually narratively works, that Adrian's not really there, because even though Rocky and Rocky Jr. have always been tried to be close, and Rocky's
Yeah.
always wanted to be close.
Well, Adrian was the glue that held them together, and without her there.
Well, the son is much smarter, is much more intelligent than Rocky is, and Rocky had always encouraged that. He's like, use your brain.
Yeah.
Don't be a fighter like me. Use your brain. Move up in the world.
Yeah, he wanted him to be the opposite of him.
Right.
Yeah, he took after his mother much more, and rightfully so.
And that's part of the issue, is because without his mom there, she would have been the one he would have naturally gravitated more towards. And probably if he really needed to connect to someone on a child parent wavelength, she would have been the better of the two, I'm sure, in almost every case. And so part of the reason I think for their estrangement as well is because they did too good a job of encouraging him to use his brain rather than brawn.
Well, that, and also, like, without Adrian there as this glue, and the person to whom he would have related, because he is more, he's not as athletically oriented, he's more of an intellectual, or not intellectual, he just is more, mental in his orientation. Without her there, it's like, well, the old wounds from 5 are going to come back and come back full force, especially just any kind of tragedy like that. It's like, well, that's going to bring out both the best in people and the worst, and those wounds are still there and they remain there. And also just think about it this other way. It's like, if Adrian were alive in this one, well, you wouldn't have nearly the conflict you have, the internal conflict with the character. And also, it would have been a different dynamic. I mean, sure, you could have showed her dying and that could have been a thing, but, it would have been a different movie. And I think that, I kind of like seeing that off screen, just because you get to see, well, because ultimately all that would do would tell us essentially the same thing as what we learn in this film, which is just that Rocky feels incomplete, without her. And I mean, maybe you could have seen him break down like he did in 3 when Mickey died, maybe, but and he does break down in a couple moments here, but it's not quite to that degree. It's a little bit more subtle than that. And again, Stallone gets to show off his acting chops in this movie. He's never really given his due on that front, but he does a really good job in this one. But I particularly like those exchanges with his son, because again, we see that Rocky 5 left an impact, and his son, as an adult, as we mentioned in the chat, is played by Milo Ventimiglia, who played Peter Petrelli in Heroes, and he stuck with the role in this movie and in his brief cameo in Creed 2, which is pretty cool. But their interactions, I think, are very believable, even though it's not Sage Stallone anymore. It's like their reactions with each other are very believable in terms of a father-son relationship that's, friendly enough, but is estranged, and for good reason. And you know, I feel for Rocky. I still call him Rocky Jr. Yeah, that's who he is.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to say to him whenever he's around him. It's a little bit
Yeah.
awkward, you
Well,
know.
and I relate to that. I sympathize with that because he'll always have the love for his father just because he's his father. But like in terms of people, it's like they're in two different worlds now, and
That's
for
true.
good reason. And they handle that very believably and very subtly. I really love that about the movie. And it's sad when you look back on the other films in the series, like let's say 3 and 4. Rocky Jr. was always kind of the icing on the cake when it came to Rocky's life, and obviously he was a little kid, but like he wasn't really there for Rocky Jr. And so then he gets to be an adult, and it's like, well, yeah, why would he have much to do with his father? Again, he doesn't like hate him or anything, but it's like there's always going to be that gap between them, and which is funny because with Adrian, he filled gaps with Adrian, and then now he's got gaps with his son. So there you go, tying it all back together. But yeah, I think that's one of the great strengths of the movie. On top of the fact that well, he's able to reconnect with Marie, who's now grown up, and again, I like that they could have gone romantic with it, and thank God that they didn't, because that would have been so relative to everything they were setting up with his losing Adrian. Like that would have been the way to just destroy the character of Rocky if he'd have done anything about that. And their interactions were always just, I thought, pretty platonic, but it was a good example of this is a city and characters and everything that have changed quite a lot, and this is a character who's changed significantly, but for the better. And so, that's an example of change doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Because she was just
It was
this,
funny she forgot what she said to him, and he
yeah.
remembered.
Well, she was just this street tough, and he could see where her life was going to go if he didn't try to turn her around, and she rebuffed his help, but obviously some of it must have sunk in, because she's got some degree of dignity, even though she's still kind of a street kid at heart. But she's trying to be he's a single father with his son, she's a single mother with her son,
Yeah.
and so they have that in common, even though they're vastly different ages. But I think that they handled a platonic, like you almost here's the fallacy of Hollywood with movies and shows. You almost never see a platonic male to female relationship. And
Definitely.
you,
This
you
is
almost
one time where I
you
was
almost
like,
never
oh, I
see
hope they
it.
get together. Like, I like romance, but it did not feel right
Yeah.
between the two.
Well, you almost never see that in Hollywood movies and
No, you
shows.
don't.
And if you do, then it almost never lasts. Like even Fox Mulder and Dana Scully in the X-Files eventually hooked up, and
Did they?
they eventually, and it was like for so long they had the best example of a working partnership, but also just a platonic relationship. But like here, this is a very believably executed platonic friendship between a man and a woman, and that is shockingly rare in movies, even though it happens all the time in real life. But they executed that
I
really, really
agree.
well here. But yeah, she is able to. Well, she's able to give him female companionship of some sort. Just another way of seeing
Right.
the world, and that's part of why men, if they're smart, men, if you're listening to this, if you're smart, you will get yourself women friends because they will see the world differently than you will, and it will, not necessarily translate into romance, but it's like they will at least be able
I've
to
always had women friends.
yeah, they'll be able to illuminate things about life that you can't always see, and vice versa. So definitely worthwhile. But no, their scenes are some of the best in this entire movie, I think, because it helps really give it an emotional focus.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like because they didn't have like any kind of romantic, like they could have kept Adrian alive and still had this pretty much the same story. But I mean,
I don't think they
I
could
get,
have. I
I
don't think
get
they could
why
have.
you said in story wise, I guess might have been better. But
Well, I don't think
I
they could
just
have had the same story if they'd have kept her alive, because she would have said don't
Well, I
fight
mean, the
again,
story
and
would
she
have
would
been different, but
she could have said don't fight again, and she would have been right. There would have been no incentive for him to fight, and so you
well,
would
they
have
could have
just
done like what you said
they could have showed her
they
dying,
could have
but then
had
it's
her
like
there and then showed how she died, which
they could have done that, I guess, but it just there's not really a
it just
whole.
feels. I feel robbed of a loved character and didn't even get to see see her passing, like didn't even get to say goodbye to her. It was just like she's there and then she's gone, so I didn't even get to say goodbye to the character.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, but again, then you
all the
think about
movies
it.
where people die,
You think about it
it's
dramatically,
sad
and
that
it's
we
like,
get to
what
say
else
goodbye
could
to the
they have?
character.
But then it's like you think about it dramatically, they'd have to have something else backing it up, because if it was just about her wasting away and dying, then that would have been more along the lines of like that Michael Haneke film Amour, or any other like cancer movie or
I've
whatever.
never
Good
seen
film, but not a Rocky film.
That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, it might have been a good film, but it wouldn't have really fit with the rest of the series. And
Well, they
you
didn't have
know,
to do like half the movie of that. It could have just been, like a little bit of it, just like near the end or whatever, just so we could see it and say goodbye
yeah,
to the character.
I mean, if they could have worked it in, maybe, but I kind of wonder how much they could have, in such a way that it didn't just bog down the narrative. And because the meat of it is that she's not there, the better part of him died with her, and we kind of got that
I'm
already.
not a filmmaker, but I don't. I'm not exactly sure how they could have done it, but I feel like they could have done it
Well, I think that's what Jake was
right.
saying, that they did try it and it didn't quite work in a way that, because we get all the character information about, because ultimately what matters is how that affects Rocky as a character, and we get all that pretty much right away. And that's what it's more interesting, I think, to see him dealing with the aftermath of that, because there's not a whole lot
Yeah.
else to it other than she dies, he's sad, that's it. Outside of him just trying to exist in a world without her, like how does one do that? And I don't even know if I could have, if I were in his shoes, I don't think I could have handled it nearly as well as he does. And even then we see he's struggling.
Oh
So
yeah, definitely.
I think dramatically it serves its purpose pretty darn well. I mean, and it doesn't bog it down with stuff that we don't like. Yeah, it might have been interesting to see, but it's like, do we really need it? Not really. I mean, we kind of get the point. And if anything, this one I think has some pretty economical storytelling in that regard. Like, we don't finally, unlike five, we put our focus where we need it, and we don't waste too much time on stuff that isn't really getting us anywhere. It's not repetitious. It makes each scene is necessary to advance the plot, and the tone is consistent. It's the closest to one in terms of its tone and pacing, which is really awesome, I think. And we haven't even mentioned the real plot of it yet, which is that besides just dealing with Adrian's death, basically the idea is that the current heavyweight champion is known as Mason the Lion Dixon, and basically now by this point in the real world and in this film, the sport of boxing has lost all of its glamour pretty much. People don't talk about it in
Right.
popular consciousness or in news outside of maybe ESPN, which is what they show in the movies from here on out. Yeah, but like in the mass culture, boxing is like pretty much done.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
Not a
it's
big thing
it's
anymore.
it's still around, but people don't really care about it. Like the last hurrah was Mike Tyson pretty much.
Yeah.
Um but like, so here you got this guy Mason the Lion Dixon, played by Antonio Tarver, who was a real life champion in a bunch of different boxing circuits. And basically they're saying he hasn't really had anybody who personally has tested him very well. And again, by this time
All those opponents were handpicked and
and by this time the boxing world is just overcome with like scandals and fixing, and also just because Mike Tyson was a rough character, and he was a convicted rapist, just everything bad about boxing that always had gone on was now front and center, as well as the corruption and all that stuff. And so, then you've got this guy who is the best of the best in this kind of tainted field, and he's never really been challenged. And so then they had that computer simulated fight between Rocky in his prime and Mason the Line Dixon in his prime, and Rocky wins the simulated fight. And so then it's like, well, as like a ratings boon and as a big payday, why don't we get Rocky to fight you in an exhibition? And
well, at first they didn't say that. It wasn't until they found out that Rocky reapplied for a license when they came up
for
with
his
that, because he saw what the people were saying, like, oh, Rocky was overrated, like that idiot that said that Rocky's overrated. It made him feel bad, and he's like, well,
yeah.
I need to prove myself, I guess, myself again, and that's why he wanted to go back boxing again. And he does ask his son for his thoughts, and of course he doesn't listen. But
well, but it's deeper than that. And well, that's one of the things I really love about this movie, is that it's not, oh gee whiz, my pride has been wounded, I need to, get the glory back.
oh,
and
I
all
know
that
it
stuff.
wasn't.
It's not
it
that.
wasn't
It's about
pride then.
it's about the whole movie is really about him learning to live without Adrian and learning to get that.
And
that
do I have one more good fight in me left to me? Like, they always say
exactly.
a good fighter always has one more good fight. I mean, I get that.
Well, it's that, but it's also just like that feeling of, just he has the beast inside of him, which obviously is years of trauma and years of grief, that has to come out. And that's where you get this angst, for his character, for lack of a better word. And I mean, Rocky is at his best whenever he is imbued with self-belief, and when he doesn't have it, then he suffers. But here, it's more about, like it was in the first one, it's about proving something to himself. In the first one, it was, I'm not just another bum from the neighborhood, and here it's that
I'm
he,
not just a washed up has-been.
well, that, but it's also like, my life still has meaning, and I can put an end to I can close the chapter of this chapter of my book. I can close it on my terms, and also put the memory of Adrian to rest as well.
Now, I do like the speech and how he does get his license back.
Oh, well, there's a couple of different speeches in this movie that I want to highlight, but like, just to close off that thought, which is there's an extra level of meaning to, so Rocky 2, it's yo Adrian, I did it. End of this movie, it's Adrian, we did it. Leaves the rose on her grave, and that closes the book on his fighting career, and also their relationship, that even after death that she is with him, and he will never ever ever forget her and keep her memory alive. And I think that speaks to the power of that relationship, that it persists even after death, and gets him through that fight. But yeah, the speeches, yeah, so here's a little, now the implausibility factor, which does kind of, it stuck out to me a little bit at the time, it sticks out to me a little bit now, which is that, in all likelihood, they probably wouldn't have cleared him for getting his boxing license back. But then again, you will find some rare instances, like not really an athlete, but still a physical performer, a physical, activity. Actually, Michael Jackson was in surprisingly good physical shape, in terms of like very few like arthritis deposits in his bones and stuff like that. He was in surprisingly good shape when he died. His problems were not that, it was the drug addiction. But like, you will find some of those rare exceptions where people have kept themselves in good enough shape to where, yeah, they could.
Well, he's in great shape.
Yeah, they could, go at it with the best of them. And so, and I didn't really know that as much at the time, but yeah, he does seem like one of those people that, he looks like he's kept himself in decent shape.
I wasn't aware you had to get a license to box.
Yeah, well, here's the thing that I found kind of interesting in this film. So a license to fight professionally, you would, but then the other thing that they don't really talk about that I was sort of like, who would insure this guy? Like that would be a not fun prospect.
So
To
if you don't get a license, you can't fight professionally.
No, it's part of the rules. But I also the part that they don't really get into is the insurance side of it, because I am sure that any kind of legal red tape that would probably be tough to get through. I mean, there's a license, but then I'm sure as far as like the payday aspect of it all, it's like how many waivers did he have to sign to do this? Um, because I am sure that would be quite something to have to juggle through all that, but so and they do establish that he's not in the prime of his life because he does have calcium deposits. He isn't as fast as he was like in 3 and 4, like especially 3, like that was
Not
the
at
fast.
all.
3 was the fastest he has ever been in the ring, but like here he's back to kind of slow lumbering. But here it makes sense because he's not he's old. Um, but it's like despite all that, they go back to his great strength, which is just that he could hit hard. So that's what they rely on in the fight, in the training for it. But it's just as far as implausibility, it's like you could easily, depending on what you're used to seeing, it's like in all likelihood he probably wouldn't have been cleared to fight again. But then again, there have been cases where people have been in unbelievably good shape in spite of their age. So I'm willing to bet that Rocky was more in that category. But to get back to your original point, the speech part, Rocky's got several good speeches in this, like what gives you the right to tell me I can live my life? And that piece of paper down the street didn't say something about doing something that makes you happy. Well, I'm trying to do something. People don't seem too happy about it. That whole thing. That's a good one. And then also the one that I mentioned last episode, which was about, it's not how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, which he
Right.
says to his son.
Yeah.
Well, but
Yeah.
and those are all excellent speeches. Like, Rocky
The scene with
Balboa.
his son was great. Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is that speech and that scene you will see circulated on social media and in those like inspirational YouTube videos and stuff. You will see that circulated all over the place, and that's kind of amazing for the 6th entry in a series that's years after the last movie. That's kind of extraordinary in its own right, that he could write dialogue that could be that widely circulated and kind of leave that kind of impact on people even 6 movies in. So that part's pretty cool. The part that I did kind of find funny on this watch, so he's got like at least those 2 speeches. He might have a couple more, and I'm like, why doesn't he become like a motivational speaker? Like, Caitlyn Jenner pre-transition and post athletics did that professionally, and I'm like, well, geez, you could make some pretty good bank doing that if you booked, get booked as a on the public speaking circuit. Like, he's not exactly unknown. His celebrity reigns pretty heavily in Philadelphia, at least, if not nationwide. He could probably parlay that into some lucrative public speaking gigs, or like corporate events or something. I mean, obviously, he doesn't have quite the business acumen outside of running the restaurant, or maybe he just doesn't want it. Who knows? But like, that part I thought was kind of interesting. I was like, man, he could easily mop the floor with other public speakers if he so chose, because he does have a gift for it at this
Knock
stage
him
of
out.
his life. What were you saying?
I said he could knock him out.
He could, and he has a couple good ones in the Creed movies also. Again, to a more diminished extent, but still, if he wanted to, he could have easily made that like a second career, because he's good at it. He's got some of the combination of the eloquence from 3 and 4 with some of the street smart, street wisdom from 1, and even from the first one, and a little bit of 2. It's kind of combining those into one place, and I'm like, man, he's really matured here. But you know, it's all about, getting his license back and getting to do this exhibition fight. And You know, the fight itself is, as I mentioned before, the fight itself is by far and away the most realistic fight out of all of them because it was actually happening. They were fighting for real. But more than that, it shot like a real fight. You know, they use digital cameras. They do they use the actual cameras that are there in the space, which is pretty cool. I mean, because the other ones
Yeah.
felt like, especially as the series went along, like 3 and 4, those felt like movies, like popcorn flicks. You know, 1 and 2 felt a little bit like the kind of how they used to shoot fights, you know, on actual film cameras. Not quite with the same professional rigging that they have now, but like, no, this one felt like you were watching a pay-per-view, and I thought that was really cool.
From what I understand, they filmed it on the heels of a filmed fight, and basically borrowed the crowd and equipment to give it that feel of realism.
For sure. And well, and that helps a lot because, I mean, again, boxing has kind of, in terms of the culture, has kind of lost its luster, but in terms of how to shoot it and the kinds of money that's associated with fights and stuff, it's pretty lucrative even still, and, you know, very slick and very professional. So those who have stuck with boxing, you know, you'll find a well-packaged product in terms of how it's shown to the public. And this one's no exception. So the actual fight is arguably in terms of just realism, are probably the best out of all of them, even more than the first one, because the other ones were heavily choreographed, obviously, and they tried their best to, you know, make them look as realistic as they could. But like, you know, this one is by far the most realistic looking, and they actually like fight for real, and that's pretty cool. And you know, but
I agree. It was realistic looking, which isn't for me, isn't really a great thing.
well, it depends
But
on what you
I
want,
still
because like
like
in terms of
this
this,
fight better than Creed 1.
well, in terms of the in terms of style, though, you can't really beat 3 and 4, but those are the least realistic fights out of all of them. They're the most stylistic
This
fights.
is of the Rocky series. It's my least favorite fight, but throwing Creed, and I liked it better than Creed 1.
Well, I liked the continuous take fight in Creed. I thought that was executed like really, really well. The one where they didn't cut at all, but
and it was thanks to the revving up of the media and their video that started this fight, you know?
Yeah, and you see that play out more and more as mass media became more of a thing beyond like 3 channels, you know? But some drawbacks of this movie, I have to say, because I watched it again and I was like, there's so much that this movie does really, really well. And then there are other things that are maybe not so much missed opportunities, but it's just more like things that, you know, it's a little bit like, so what, you know? So like one of those is actually Mason the Lion Dixon. Like there's really not much to his character. I mean, granted, the internal conflict is what this movie is really about, but like Rocky 1 had Apollo Creed, and he was so bloody interesting. And this guy, again, he's not like Tommy Gunn. You don't dislike him, but like there's not much to him. And mostly for him, he's just doing it because he wants to get some legitimacy as a, you know, establish himself, even though he is the champ. You know, you'd hope that would be enough for him, but he's just trying to establish himself.
Never seems to be enough for any of these champions.
Well, there's just not a whole lot to this character, and Antonio Tarver is not like a professional actor. He is a professional fighter, but he does actually a pretty decent job of acting. I mean, he doesn't have to get too far outside of his comfort zone, but still, he does pretty well. And it's just, again, sad that there's not a whole lot to him as a character. And
well, I'd like to say though, when I was looking at the two of them, like Sylvester Stallone looks way more built and like a professional fighter than he did.
Yeah.
in the movie, and you say he was really a professional fighter.
Oh
I was
yeah.
looking at him; he doesn't really look like he's a professional fighter.
Well, he
And,
was. He actually held
and
quite a few titles, not
yeah,
just
that's
one
just
circuit.
like looking at the two. Like Rocky looks so fucking. I mean, he's like what 60. His character's like 60 something or whatever,
Yeah, but
and
he
he's
looked
fucking
awesome.
jacked. I mean, he's
Well,
fucking.
and I
You
hate to
know,
say it, but I think part of that came down. Well, Stallone did keep himself in good shape, but also I think some of it years later they found out he had been taking steroids to help a little bit. So I hate to say it, but I think that is part of it. But it's I do agree with you. He's got some of his bruiser body back, kind of like the first two,
yeah,
because he was far more lean and mean in 3 and 4.
yeah. He looked like a professional boxer champion in 3 and 4. Where like you said, he looked more like a bruiser in 1 and 2, and yeah, he definitely looked more like a bruiser in this one.
Yeah, but he is no slouch in the physicality department. Like he looks
Oh yeah, I mean I've
like
seen him
relative to
in
his age,
some
he
movies.
looks incredible in this. So good for him. Well, one thing I did kind of find funny is you look at this movie and then you look at Creed 1 and 2 and his face noticeably thinned out in those movies as opposed to here. Like he looks a little bit like a potato in this movie. And I suspect that's partially because he bulked up for it. But like, yeah, then you look at Creed and Creed 2 and you're like, yeah, that looks a little bit more like Stallone in the face anyway. Um but other drawbacks I think to this film besides just Mason the Line Dixon being not that interesting of a character is that so we've walked down memory lane, we've met up with characters that we didn't think we'd meet up with again. We've asked the question of, where does he go from here, all that kind of stuff. Um when you really get down to it though, it's like that's kind of what this movie has to offer, and also just being able to go out the way you want to go out. That is kind of what this movie has to offer. Outside of that, there's not really a whole lot else to it, and not a whole lot of reason to like rewatch it outside of in the context of the rest of the series. And like you could go from one to this one and you'd probably be okay, but you'd miss a whole lot. But you could tonally it is the most like the first one, and it's banking on the fact that people know the first one the best and love it the most. But like, outside of the nostalgia factor, it's like there's not a whole lot else to it. And so it did kind of, because I remember loving it when I saw it in the theater, and I still really, really like the movie a lot. It's one of the strongest of the series, but like there it did kind of as I watched it again, I was like, yeah, it caps things off nicely, but just as a movie in and of itself, it's there's not a whole lot else to it outside of just wrapping things up. You know what I mean? Um,
Hmm.
and that's it. It is still it does it well. Granted, it ends the series on a better note, but I think it's just one of those things where but then again, you have to ask yourself, was there room for a whole lot of new stuff outside of doing what they eventually did by spinning it off with Creed? Um,
No,
yeah, there wasn't really a whole lot else, so they just needed to kind of wrap it up. And
that's
as
why I
far
said that I don't think they needed to do the movie at all.
well, but as far as wrap up movies go, and as far as like years later sequels, I've seen far worse. And again, particularly with what the movie does do well, which is the stuff that I've mentioned before, and plus the fact that again, I did. If you were a boxing enthusiast or someone who was really familiar with it, like Brandon, who's not here right now, if you were in that camp, then I'm sure that you would look at the fight at the end here and be like, yeah, it's nice to see one that actually is real for once, and one that's covered like a real fight and not like a movie with slow mos and no and punches that sound like anvils and stuff like that. So just depending on what you want, you get out of it what you get out of it, I guess. But I mean, plot wise, that's kind of it. I mean, they do some things that are kind of similar in the fight, but like, yeah, the fight itself is just it's an exhibition fight, and it moves that way. It's 10 rounds instead of 15 because that is an important
Well,
thing.
15 got changed to 12.
That's right,
Uh,
because the rules changed
yeah, they
eventually.
changed it to 12 because even in um, Creed they said that, and I looked it up online. And they said they go 12 rounds now, so
Mm-hmm.
it's now 12, not 15.
Yeah, but just yeah, as far as the fight goes, it moves pretty well. Apparently, there were a couple of different endings that they shot. I think they did it for a couple of reasons. They did it partially to prevent spoilers, but also partially just give them options. But like, so the ending that they went with is that it's a split decision, like in the first movie, and the victory goes to Mason the Line Dixon. But what's I think in all the endings, apparently, Rocky leaves the ring before the announcement is read because he did there what he came to do. It's kind of in the same spirit of the first one. That's not about the actual victory. It's about kind of the moral victory, about proving something to himself. But like here, they make that even more definitive because he doesn't even care about the result. It's just that he got out of it when he needed to get out of it. He exorcised the demon, as it were. But like other endings include well, the one they went
Well,
with as well as
I want to say what I really liked about that ending is
yeah.
I really liked how they both showed respect for each other
Oh yeah,
after the
totally.
fight. Like he's like, I respect you, like you're a hell of a fighter. Like Rocky acknowledged that the guy could take a hit. Like people kept saying, "Oh, he can't take a hit. He's not used to. He can't handle it." And he did handle it, and he fought back. And likewise, as good as Rocky gave it to him, he gave it to Rocky, and Rocky still took it still, even though he was an old man. He took all his big hits too, so they earned each other's respect, and I like that.
I like that too. And again, Mason the Lion Dixon is not like it's a good name. I have to give him credit. That's a great name for a character. But the even though he himself is not all that interesting as a character, he's never portrayed as like a villain. I mean, the closest that
Yeah,
we
he
get
just he kind of seems like an ass at first, like the beginning of the
a
movie,
little, but
but
not
not
too
too bad.
not
But
like Tommy Gunn. And I
oh
mean,
no,
the promoters are
but
still kind of the real bad guys in this one also, but it's even
they
they're
always are.
even they're a little bit more downplayed and a little bit more realistic, which I appreciated. And their motivations make sense. They want to make a big payday, and why not? He's a big name, and it'd be a good angle, and they play the angle, so why not? Um, but yeah, I mean, I do like that they had that respect angle, so they got that back as well as the moral victory aspect. But no, the ending that they went with is the one they went with. I think they shot other ones where it was a draw, and then they actually did shoot one where Rocky wins. Which, if they'd have gone with that, that might have been a little too silly, and also. Mason the Lion Dixon would never get any respect after that point. Like he would be
Right,
a utter laughing stock if they went with that ending, you know? Because he gets his ass kicked by a 60-year-old man, and he still kind of gets
well,
his ass kicked. Like he
still
gets
with a
his hand
draw,
broken. He
still I
gets
don't
his
know.
hand broken during the fight. Even with the ending they went with, and it's like, yeah. So it does them both some good as far as their characters go. Um, but I mean, plot wise, that's about it. I mean, the notable, I think I mentioned Bill Conti came back with the score on this one, which is great. Kind of much needed. You hear a lot of the familiar themes in this one, and of course, Gonna Fly Now comes back full force in a montage that pretty much mirrors the first one. If anything, you could argue it perhaps mirrors it a little too reverently, but again, this is kind of a nostalgia trip, so, why not? But one notable addition in this film that is a interesting callback to the very first Rocky. So apparently, Stallone had wanted to show during the triumphant running up the steps where he's in shape and he can do it. Um, he had wanted to carry Butkus up the steps, and eventually it was like, I can barely lift this dog, and he's just gonna get in the way, and it's not gonna work, and it's just too much, blah blah blah. But here, the dog Punchy, who I need to mention Punchy a little bit, but Punchy, he does run with him up the steps, and he does lift him up over his head, so they do kind of get to do that, which I thought was kind of an interesting little inside reference to those who know a little bit about the making of the first movie. But yeah, the dog Punchy is kind of an interesting mirroring of Butkus, but they keep saying that the dog is ugly. Is he
It
really
is.
ugly? He is? I didn't think he was. I mean, I thought he
Well,
was
I
kinda
don't like dogs either, so you're asking the wrong person.
well, that explains a lot, but, the dog to
He
me,
just
like
looked older. That's all to
that's
me.
what I was gonna say, he looked old, he looked kinda scruffy, but, like, he didn't look ugly to me. That was the key word, was ugly. Like, yeah, he's kinda the dog is obviously a mirror for how Rocky feels inside, because he's kinda old, he's been passed up by people at the pound or whatever. So he takes an interest in the dog, and so it's obviously reinforcing the metaphor there. But I was just, whenever I saw that, I was like, that dog's not ugly. It's just kind of old and worn out. But ugly is like, when I think of ugly, I think of like a bulldog or something. Like, those things are ugly.
They're ugly
Um,
too.
yeah, but that a character that, again, possibly a little bit of lost opportunity. Uh, Possibly, but I also do like the subtlety with which it's handled, is actually Marie's child, known as Steps. I thought his dynamic with Rocky was kinda interesting. They could have possibly gone further with it, but they also had his actual son to deal with, but, like, he does kinda almost become a surrogate father for him, and he does kinda try to get him on a better path. He does try to get him interested in the dog and that kinda stuff, and I thought that was kinda neat. That was a little bit of that good Samaritan aspect of Rocky's
You know,
character
Punchy
coming
was the
back.
joke, right? Yeah,
What?
you're very funny.
Oh,
When he
yeah,
named
yeah.
him Punchy, he said, it was a joke. And he's like, yeah, you're very funny.
Yeah, that
But he
was
still went with the name anyways.
yeah, that was good, I like that. But also kinda mirroring Marie from the first movie, like, when she was that age, I mean, kinda mirroring that, he kinda dismisses Rocky, but then kind of takes a liking to him somewhat, even though they're not best buddies or anything. But I actually appreciated the subtlety of that, of that relationship, but they could have possibly gone further with it.
Well, I like the fact that he had his real son in his corner. His son, quit his job and decided to be in his father's corner, and
Yeah, yeah,
his son actually, his son even said, I haven't seen a fight in a long time. So obviously he just, completely distanced himself from boxing, which makes sense. I mean, the way he felt about his dad, and he was never. I mean, he trained that one time in
Rocky
five and
5,
stuff,
yeah.
but he relied more on his brains his whole life, and
Yeah,
so it made sense that he would distance himself from boxing. And even though his friends watched, and his friends were all like, "Oh, baby, Rocky," and
yeah.
cheering him on, he was less enthused about seeing his father than everybody else was.
Well, and also let's bring up the fact that, well, again, we saw him train in 5. That didn't win his father's approval, and so he
His
goes
father
the
didn't
way
even notice.
yeah, he goes the way of using his mind. Can't escape his father even in that realm, and in if anything, he's kinda put down by his, coworkers, um, and that was tough for him and tough for his father to see when he does see him, and,
Well, that was his boss that was putting him down.
yeah, but, even his other coworkers, like, he can't really get out of his father's shadow, and, the other so again, the Creed movies are about Adonis Creed, but, like, we get a few little tidbits about Rocky's character that we'll mention before we close off, but as far as Rocky, Jr. is concerned, so he apparently met up with a girl and got together with her, and they actually moved all the way to Vancouver. So when Rocky finally does see his son again after years, he has to go to Vancouver to see him. So he had to get far away to escape the long shadow of his father.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I was in
Philadelphia.
the neighborhood.
Yeah, because obviously Philadelphia is going to cast an even longer shadow than he would even nationwide. But it's just think about that from his perspective. Like, he had to go to a whole other country to get out of his father's shadow, and that's saying a lot. But it also kind of shows that he's a family man in his own
right.
right.
They don't. In Canada, don't give a shit about boxing. They're into hockey.
Yeah, but he is also kind of his own family man with the wife and son that Rocky Jr. gets, which is so that part of his father has carried over, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the again, this movie's great strengths are also some of its weaknesses, in that it's a fun walk down memory lane. It's a good way to close off the series, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of other reasons to like pop it in just randomly, out of nowhere, in the same way that you could watch, Rocky 4, or you could watch that as just kind of a one-off,
3 and 4.
Yeah, you could watch those kind of back to back or as a one-off, but like, would you do that here? Probably not. But then again, it's part 6, what do you want? Would you really do that? Probably not. You could watch the first one and then this one back to back, and you'd be okay. You'd have a satisfactory experience because they're tonally very similar. But it's one of those ones that I don't think it holds up as well upon repeat viewings. But for what it was intended to do, and in the context of when it came out, I think it did exactly what it was intended to do. But unless anybody has any additional things to throw in there, we'll get to favorite scenes and all that. But I just wanted to wrap up a few things about the Creed movies in regard to Rocky himself, because Rocky is a fairly minor point in those movies, and that's why I felt okay, just covering them off at a glance. But basically, all that we really see from him in the Creed movies is he's still doing the restaurant. He's reluctant to train Adonis Creed relative to what happened with Tommy Gunn, although he never mentions Tommy Gunn by name, but we know that that's why he's feeling that way. Does agree to train him, and he gets to impart some of his wisdom about how, when you're going in the ring, it's
in the cloud. What's the cloud?
There's you and the cloud. That was a funny joke, but when you're in the ring, it's not just you and the opponent, it's you against you, and you're fighting yourself, and you're the toughest opponent you'll ever face, and just basically all the stuff that we've already seen him learn, throughout these movies. And
I did like the fact that he the wife found him and
Apollo Creed's wife. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think I really liked how they. I don't think Creed. I don't think Apollo would have slept with another woman.
I think he would have. I do.
I don't think he would have, but I don't know. I think that kind of was a blemish on his thing. And I can see.
I think he totally would have, though. To be honest,
being the son, I can see how it's being upset, saying that Apollo made a mistake. Which, if he did, it was a mistake as far as sleeping with another woman, not necessarily having another kid, which is how he feels because he's the product of the affair.
Yeah.
So
I think Apollo is the kind of person that I don't think he would have been the biggest womanizer, but I could have seen him like someone caught his eye and one thing led to another, and boom, he's got a kid. Like, I could have seen that happening with him, but
I thought he had seen more integrity than that.
I think he overall does, but I just everybody's prone to a bad move at one point or another. But
yeah, that's a very big bad move.
It is, but like, again, he had pride. He
I've
had a
never
need.
cheated on anybody ever, so
No, but like
yeah,
he had
I don't
pride.
understand cheating.
He had pride and he had a need for admiration. So I could have seen him like,
Well, yeah, that's true.
especially in his later years, like, because think about how desperate he is in 4, to kind of not, to not be forgotten. Like I could have seen him. Someone caught his eye. One thing leads to another. I could have seen that happening, but as far as the character of Rocky goes, like he's imparting his wisdom to Adonis. He, takes him under his wing after some coaxing, just because he wants to leave the whole thing behind him. He got his demons out in Rocky Balboa. He got his demons out. He doesn't want to. It's all behind him at this point. And that's part of why there's not a whole lot new left to discover with him outside of maybe just some additional details here and there, like saying that they tried chemotherapy with Adrian.
Yeah, like he didn't talk with the Apollo's wife since the funeral, which is pretty bad because I think they were all friends and
they were. But I could also understand how like that might have that plus everything that happened with him not being in a great state of mind after the events of 5. I could have seen that possibly being a contributing factor to why he might have lost touch with people, and or maybe she just wanted to be left alone for a while, or who knows what. But we know that much. We know that when he has his own cancer battle to fight briefly, that he wants to join.
Yeah, just give up.
He wants to join Adrian essentially, and especially given that chemotherapy didn't work with her enough to have her survive.
I do have to say I liked Michael B. Jordan's acting.
Yeah, he
he portrayed it.
He's great as an actor.
Yeah, he's a decent actor. I hated the Fantastic Four, but I think that there's other reasons before
it
that.
It wasn't because of him. He's a great actor.
It wasn't necessarily him. I mean, he was wrongly cast. To put it that way, he was very wrongly cast. And that movie had all kinds of other issues too. But yeah, I liked him in Black Panther. He did very good in this job, and I really liked the girl played Bianca, the one who played Valkyrie.
Yeah, I love her.
I really like her. She's a great actress. I like even though it's not my music, I liked her singing. So I just wanted to point that out. I liked her acting. I liked her singing, and I liked his acting too.
Well, but as far as
the music,
as far as Rocky goes, he at that point he wants to basically, the fact that Adonis Creed is doing as well as he does is what gives him the motivation to keep going, because he does see that he didn't repeat the same mistake with Tommy Gunn, that he does have a good protege who does fight with heart and that kind of stuff. So that part is interesting. Plus the detail, again, most of what we see in Creed 1 and 2 as far as Rocky goes are details that are only really mean a lot for the super fans. But like the one detail that I think is really, really important is that during the Rocky 3 ending rematch between just Rocky and Apollo, no cameras, no judges, no nothing, he confesses that Apollo won that match, and rightfully so, because I mean, technically, Apollo was the better fighter between the two.
I did like the way they added that in there, and yeah, we all knew that, and the fact is, Rocky did win by like a second,
Yeah,
and the fact that they never had another rematch like publicly is kind of odd because of how it ended with only 1 second between the two,
Yeah, well, it's but I like that detail a lot, because what that tells us about Rocky is that he's reached this point in his life where he's loved, he's lost, he's gained, he's lost, he's exercised the demon, and now he can just be more or less at peace with that fact, that technically Apollo was the better of the two of them.
Well,
And
even then, when he was saying it, like he agreed with what Paulo said. You fight great. I'm a great fighter, and that was
exactly
100% true. And he knew that, and they both knew that, and that's the hell they were.
for sure. But I mean, that's about it for Rocky as far as the first Creed goes, and then 2, it's just seeing that indeed what the wounds he sustained in 4, have the not just the physical wounds which he's probably recovered from by then, but the kind of psychological wounds of seeing Apollo get killed by Drago. Those get brought up again, and so now he's in the Mickey position of saying to Adonis, that this guy is gonna,
and I'm not gonna train you, and
he does the Mickey thing from Rocky 3, where he's like, I'm not gonna train you. This guy's gonna kick your ass, and indeed he does. But I mean, there's you see what I mean, though. There's not a whole lot else to discover about Rocky as a character once we get to the Creed movies, and again, that's rightfully so, though, because those are about Adonis Creed. And
now it's funny. The baby that they first had was so adorable. Like when the little daughter, and then like they changed babies, and like the second baby they got, wow, it's kind of ugly.
Well, I think they obviously some time went by.
Yeah,
but,
the first. Well, she wasn't that much older. It was just like they took her home from the hospital, and now the baby's just like not quite as cute as she was when she was born. Different, but obviously it was a different baby they used. I like the name that they chose though, Mara.
Yeah, I like that too.
Like that.
Now, if we were to cover the character of Adonis Creed, which we may yet do when there are more Creed movies to sort through. I mean, there's 2 now, and there's a third one coming out next year. If we were to do that, I think that would be an interesting discussion, because they do touch on the Rocky movies, but now as they go along, they become their own thing, and rightfully so, because I didn't want them to be the same as Rocky. I feel like that would have defeated.
That's what I didn't like about the first one, is I really felt they were trying to do Rocky all over again, but without the passion. I mean,
I think it's got enough in common with Rocky 1, but I think the biggest success with the first Creed is that they very clearly establish that Adonis is his own character, and they make it about him. And I
know they make it about him, but it still felt like they were trying to mirror it. They were trying to sneak that in there.
I mean, somewhat. I mean, my mom, like I mentioned, big Rocky fan. And it was the same year as The Force Awakens, but like she pointed out specifically that she felt like with Creed, like she wasn't manipulated in the same way that she was with The Force Awakens, and I can actually kind of see that now.
I can agree with that.
But again,
I don't agree at all.
Well, we're not talking about Creed, though. We're talking about Rocky, and that's about all there is to say about Rocky as a character in those movies. So that's why I just wanted to glance over.
Well, hey, I watched them, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Well, but anyway, as far as Rocky himself, it was quite an odyssey.
And they were my first time watches too. So,
well, it was quite an odyssey, but you can see why I wanted everybody to see these, because given how much this character evolves, and the heights and the highest of highs and the lowest of lows and everything in between, it's like the loves and the losses and everything that he goes through, it's like you really feel like these characters are your friends or even your family.
Right. That's why I was so upset with how Adrian is gone and we don't get to say goodbye to her.
Yeah, but again,
that's why I'd rather 5 than like the end, because at least she's there and she's still alive in your mind, until they made this movie and killed her off, and got to see her end, and that's just my thought on it.
I mean, it would be interesting if some of those earlier script drafts could surface to see, how much better it would or wouldn't have worked. I'm willing to bet it wouldn't have worked as well, but that's up for debate, I suppose. But
yeah, I think when you're thinking about that Kroll, it's almost like you're thinking about it like as far as like Back to the Future goes, where they killed off Marty's father. Well, and we know why because the actor didn't want a part in the movie. So,
No,
but
not really.
Yeah, I don't know where you. I don't know where you're getting that
I
from
wasn't
there,
anywhere
Dave.
near
But
as emotionally attached. Thinking more like Han Solo when Han Solo died and you actually saw it. You know.
Yeah. No. Tell you this, Kroll. Though this, okay, it happened off screen beforehand. Plenty of context in the film. I felt absolutely comfortable that I knew what happened and we didn't get to see it. Whereas with Han, I had the misfortune of walking into the theater. This was when I worked in the theater. Walking into the theater right before it happened
oh
with no
no,
context and not having seen the film. And I'm like,
ick.
damn it.
Well,
Dave, that's an example of a spoiler that was a spoiler.
Well,
that wasn't a spoiler at all.
well, and also,
I
okay,
totally
and
knew he was gonna
I'll argue the opposite point with Han Solo's death. That one felt like
I knew he was going to die.
Well, but I was like, we've seen this before. It's obviously
Yeah.
mirroring the Obi-Wan thing, and it felt very kind of artificial.
No, it didn't mirror.
so-
It didn't mirror Obi-Wan at all.
Yeah, it did. It
No.
totally did.
No.
Yes, it
Well,
did.
again,
Oh.
when that's the only
Not in the
part you've
least.
seen with no context, it doesn't really mirror anything. It's just
Obi-Wan died to become stronger and be more
No, but
powerful in the Force.
I'm saying in the story, it's the idea of the mentor figure who
Yeah.
dies at this point.
it's
That wasn't
either
the
the
mentor figure, that was
it's
his
either the
son.
mentor or like the love interest.
That was
Those
his
are
son.
like two major archetypes that you have,
Yeah,
and they're almost overused. And one could argue, well, they are overused, but one could argue that some stories would be better without going that route.
yeah.
But some stories are better for going that route, and a lot of
I
it
don't
does
think
have to do with
it
how they're
brought
done.
anything to the story with having Kylo kill his father. I thought there was no point at all. I mean, I knew he was going to kill him, but I don't
No, I'm
understand
saying
why
as
he
far
would
as
do it.
that
Because
that
supposedly
trilogy's protagonist
supposedly
is
he was like conflicted between trying to be good and bad. He was still conflicted, and even after he killed his father, like that was supposed to be his push that he needed. He was still conflicted. He
no
was still
the
conflicted. He
where
was still
I'm
conflicted
speaking
through
as
all the
far as the
movies.
protagonist of that trilogy, which is Rey. You know, it's meant to further her arc because that mentor is no longer there, just like how Obi-Wan was no longer there for Luke. And we're talking about Star Wars. You got to keep it to Rocky. Sorry, but
Right.
I'm putting my foot down here. But anyway, so but just to cap it all off, this was the Rocky series. It was quite a journey. Very rarely have I ever seen a series carry us through a character and a whole cast of characters this well and this powerfully over a franchise that has lasted this long, and in a way that for the most part felt pretty genuine. Even in some of the sillier movies, it had its heartfelt moments. So,
Mhm.
I think it was a worthwhile journey, and I hope you all enjoyed going on it with me. But before we formally end it off, we do have to mention our favorite scenes and favorite moments from Rocky Balboa. So, Crowley, you didn't like the movie, so you ought to go first and say what you did like about it in terms of characters moments and lines of dialogue, whatever.
Well, like I said, I do like that his son went into his corner, and I guess the best scene is the end when they both acknowledge each other, the fighters, Rocky and the other guy, they both acknowledge that about the other one that they gave a hell of a good fight, and even though it was an exhibition match, they both went beyond the exhibition. They treated it as a real fight, and they both know that. And they both acknowledge that, and they come out respecting each other, and I like that. That was probably the best part of the movie. And I don't know, there was a few liners here and there that was decent, but yeah.
Tammy?
Let's see. Although I thought there was a lot of good things in the movie, actually. So
You
I
gotta
guess
pick
I'd have
one.
to agree with Kroll. I like the ending, but I like the heartfelt scenes too. When he's sitting there talking to Adrian.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she can't talk back, he's still going there to talk to her and to tell her what's going on. It's sad, but yet it shows that side of him that he's still looking for um her help, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Her
Um,
guidance.
yeah,
yes.
Dave, did you have one?
Um, one of my favorite moments, even though I like the final fight, one of my favorite moments is when he first picks up uh, the um, woman interest,
Oh,
um,
Marie, yeah.
and it's where the people in the bar are like,
Yeah.
you know,
No,
they're
Marie. It ain't
outside
all right.
and they're name calling and shit and at first he's like, okay, let's go, but then he's like, you know what? And she's like, you don't have to do this, and he's like, yeah, I do. Just sit here, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And goes off and off on them, you know. And
For
then he comes
sure.
back to the car, and it's like everything's okay.
Well, it may again. That's what I love about the writing of this. Like the writing really came back in this one, and particularly like little things that reinforce the theme of the movie, namely that the neighborhood's change. It's like you don't have to do this, but he wants to do it to be able to make some kind of impact on his surroundings and his feelings of purpose, that kind of stuff. And he says, "No, Maria, it ain't all right," because he knows it's not all right. He knows he's not feeling the way he should be feeling. So all those little interactions, they all do what those kinds of scenes should do in a movie. They service the internalization of the character.
And later, I love how their jaw dropped when they saw his ass on TV, and I was like, yeah, you shouldn't have fucked with him, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Jake?
Oh, and actually, like the writing, I will admit, yeah, the writing was generally good, but like some of this, supposedly a lot of the scenes with Marie in particular were unscripted, were just kind of there. And one great little moment I love is when he changes that light bulb and it comes on and it's like bright, and then he's
Yeah.
just,
It is
and
funny.
supposedly that was legit. He did not know it would be that bright, and so he just played it off as, and it was really good. He had a couple other lines with her that he just kind of came up with on the spot, and one of them he followed it up with, well, I don't know where that came from, but it's just I was kind of amused by those kind of the little moments they had together, but knowing that some of them were kind of unscripted just kind of made it even, they just felt like they naturally had a great
Chemistry.
chemistry, even if it was platonic. They had a good
Oh, they
chemistry
did.
together.
Well, the
And
actors actor to
yeah,
actor, they had great
yeah.
chemistry
Now,
too.
is that
For
the same
sure.
actress that played the old
No,
girl?
No, it is
no.
not.
Okay.
And
I was wondering,
I
apparently,
that would have been really interesting if they had gone for it.
apparently she tried to sue because she claimed that he had promised her that she could come back, but I don't know. Maybe he didn't think there was a chemistry with that actress. I don't know.
Well, and just because someone was a
Yeah,
decent kid actor doesn't mean they're going to be a
right,
decent adult actor,
right.
So
The
that's the other thing to throw in there.
yeah, exactly.
I just thought it
But
would be
yeah,
interesting if it
like I
was the
said, there were
same.
little moments like that. I agree. A lot of the moments with the final fight were great. The acknowledgement between the two, the fact that his son was in his corner, and Duke and Polly, like all of, like the team was back together.
Yeah.
That was kind of nice. and then you had and then the way that the announcers all were eating crow by the end, they were except for the one guy that said,
The
"You
one
know
guy's
what?
like, "Oh, I'm a
I
fan.
was
I'm
a Rocky fan."
Yeah, I like that
He's
guy.
like, Rocky
Yeah.
asked me how I'm doing, and I gotta admit, I'm a fan.
I like
but
that,
but probably if I had to, and like again, the part where Paulie loses his job, I that was probably the one part in the whole series where I really felt for him. Like just then he came into the restaurant and was being a
Funny, I
total
was thinking it
ass,
was being
but
more of an ass.
but for that one moment, I'm like, okay, I feel for you, dude, but I do think if I had to pick one, it probably would be that big long speech that he gives to his son outside the restaurant, and he's talking to him, and then he's like, somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you no good. And then, and just skip ahead a little bit. He's like, he's like, you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers, saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. It's like he's been building up and just laying all this stuff on him, probably making him feel like shit. But then he turns around, he's like, that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always going to love you. And it's like, he goes from just wailing on him to just right away, like, you're my son. And, I really like the way he structured that. And I thought it was a great moment.
Another motivational speech.
Yeah, that was a motivational speech there.
Yep, he quit his job.
And it worked. Yeah, it did work.
Yep.
Well, I'm telling you, you could totally do that as another gig, and you'd probably make some serious bank.
Right.
So for me,
and I'll just mention ending with "Gonna Fly Now" at the end was kind of a nice touch too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the end credits of this movie. They kind of did what Rocky 5 tried to do with its ending credits, because like there it showed clips from all the movies and stuff, but like this one I think did it even better because it showed real people doing, running up the Rocky steps and doing the jumping and posing at the top of the steps. Like that, to me, that really warmed my heart because, relative to how generally not very well executed Rocky 5 was, it felt a little bit hollow and a little bit like, oh, look at how far we've come. And it just was like, yeah, right. But then here it's like, no, Rocky exists in the hearts of everybody that ever saw at least the first movie, if not the whole series. But like that to me was that was like a big thank you to the fans. And I really, really love that about this film, is it really it remembered what made Rocky so special in the first place and did a good job of saying thank you to the fans, I think. But that was a good one. But then also, as far as my favorite scene, I mean, I actually really loved when Rocky was kind of going down memory lane and we saw like where the ice skating rink was, and it's really quite moving and sad because, well, on the one hand, it's cool as a fan because you're like, oh, I remember that. That's wonderful. But then you're also like, but it's sad because, this is where they fell in love and she's not there anymore. And, it's just, but you also, it's got a lot of layers to it because then you also think about how Paulie is saying that he's doing this to himself. He's kind of doing this almost like as an anniversary thing. And he hasn't been able to move on, and so he's not doing himself a whole lot of good at the end of the day. Like he's keeping her memory alive, but at the same time, it's like, well, how much good is it really doing him, And but I like that scene a lot, and then I love when he kind of coming off the heels of that in the bar, and he's like, "Wait, are you Marie?" And like when he said that, because I had no clue that was coming. I didn't look at the cast or anything like that, but like when he said that, my jaw like hit the floor because I never ever expected to see that character again ever.
Right.
And there she was, and she was a great character, like a worthy addition to the series as a whole. And I was just like, wow,
I agree with that.
that is doing justice to the fans and doing justice to the legacy that you've built. So thank you. And that's yeah. So I mean that if anything, that kind of closes us off really well because Rocky is a legacy. It's bigger than any one of us, and yet at the same time, it's representative of all of us. That's what Rocky is. It's what we can do if we apply ourselves and believe in ourselves, and that's why I wanted us to go on this journey. So thank you for joining me.
Yeah, it was better
Very
than I
good.
thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I thought it was really
I agree.
interesting.
Yep, this is where we're going to be doing our outros and telling the ladies and gentlemen out there that may be watching exactly who we are. So,
Sounds like a plan.
Fro, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm an enthusiast of movies, TV shows. I love watching them, and I love talking about them. I also love reading books. And if we'll talk about movies, I come on this podcast, and I come on Sunday's podcast with Dave and Tammy, and a few other people, or sometimes just one other, and also come on anime discussion once a month. And also been popping up here and there on some other podcasts. I don't have any channels of my own, but you never know when you're gonna see me around on one. And also on some pickup videos as well. Yeah, that's about it.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Dane. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I am Dane Kyle, filmmaker and YouTuber on my channel Dangerous Arts, DANEJUROUS Arts, and last year I did a series called Oztober, which was 31 days, 31 Wizard of Oz adaptations in film and television that I looked at. And then this year I did August in Wonderland, where I did 31 days, 31 Alice in Wonderland film and TV adaptations, and got to take a little break from that and future videos I have planned to talk about the Rocky movies because I didn't know when else I would do it. And also, I just wanted to take you guys on the journey with me. And I think you'll agree with me that it was a journey well worth taking. But yeah, be sure to check out my channel, like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell to be caught up with what I do next.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Well, I'm David's fiance. I go on this channel and another and talk with everybody about movies and get their opinions and hear how they feel about everything. And it's quite enjoyable. I have my own collections, and right now that's about it.
Alrighty. How about you, Jake?
Well, I'm Kotobukijake. I'm the co-host of SeptumSin vs. World, a physical media channel where we go on and talk about all kinds of media, particularly movies and TV shows, anime and whatnot. We just, this coming week, will be airing a Halloween discussion of the anime Hellsing Ultimate, which will be a lot of fun. We had a couple of this number with us, along with my co-host, Brandon, who bowed out before this one, but, you know, he was on for the last. We do pick up videos and we do various other things here and there. We're doing a Horrorween walk through anime that are good for the Halloween season. I think the third installment is on this week, I believe. So keep an eye out for that. I work most of the rest of the time. I have a full-time job and also have the co-founder of RVA Homegrown Natives, a nursery dedicated to selling pure species native plants in the RVA area. But I do try to watch stuff whenever possible and read and keep up on media when possible, partly so that I can join these fine folks here on this channel and Delusions of Grandeur occasionally and talk movies with them. And again, I appreciate this opportunity to go through the Rocky series. I did not have time to hit Creed 1 and 2 for this discussion. I had seen them previously, but I have a copy of Creed, and I will try to put it in this week to get that one knocked out and maybe get the other one knocked out before the third one hits theaters.
But you did find it to be a worthy journey, though, right? I mean, everybody found it to be a worthy journey through this series.
Yeah, my expectations were exceeded. Let's put it that way, which is always a good thing.
That's good. I think it was a journey well worth taking.
Alrighty, and my name is David
Now they
Strady.
do Rambo.
I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, so thank you for coming along with us on this journey if you have. We basically go on every a week and discuss a movie of our choice. And I think we have an enjoyable time. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I also podcast on with Crow and my fiance and a good friend of us named Forrest, also known as Philippe. And we have a blast every Sunday doing that. But I also do some video pickups of various things that I pick up and do some video reviews from time to time. So, but that being said, I do have some news. I am putting together my first anthology, and it's going to be somewhat based on, well, using the character from Dark Zone 13 called Boris. Which is why we nicknamed Philippe Forrest when he comes on, and I want to continue and extend his character as a somewhat presenter of stories, and hopefully be able to present that sometime next year.
In my action debut.
And yes. Kroll is gonna be involved with the project, so it's gonna be exciting. So hopefully we'll have some more news in the next coming months. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully y'all don't get to any street brawling anytime soon. Just because we covered a film that involved some of that, but. That being said, everyone, give yourselves a round of applause and a pat on your back. We got through it. So, everyone,
patchy.
Say good night, y'all.
Good night.